Started. All right, so welcome everybody to our final meeting of the year. So it's December 20th, 2022, and I guess just to get kicked off right now, if we can do a attendance roll call. I don't know who wants to lead that.
Robert Bowker,
Here.
Michael Aronson, here, Carla Elliott, here, Barbara, sorry, I forget your last name. Brenda
Burbach.
Burbach, sorry.
That's okay.
Brenda Burbach. Stay here.
Here.
Eric Talbot,
Here.
Seth Roy,
Here.
and Isabel Nguyen is absent, and Nina Aaron is absent, and Ulysses Castillo is pending arrival.
All right, so that's six board members present, and both alternates here, Brenda and Carla, will be able to vote based on the current attendance. So if we have any items that can be a vote today, they're comfortable and they've been here for the past several meetings and they are eligible. Okay, so with that, I think the first item on the agenda is going to be approval of the minutes from November 22nd. I actually, those were distributed. I have to, those, okay. So if everyone's had a chance to read those, have a vote on, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Michael Aronson, motion to approve the minutes from the November 22nd meeting.
Second,
Cordelia, second.
okay. Any objections? No objections. The motion passes. The minutes are approved. So that was, and I don't know if I need to repeat the, just for the audio, for whoever is going to be transcribing this audio later, with Michael making the motion and Carla seconding, and that they were approved by unanimous consent. So the next item on the agenda, we're going to start with new business. We only have one item of new business today, which is a BAR at 10 Everett. This is an addition, a third floor addition. So we can bring the applicant in a second. I just wanted to just kind of be clear. So this is a third floor addition. I believe this has already gone through a couple of zoning variances.
This has obtained zoning variances that will require non-conforming three-family structure. Now it's non-conforming use because it's in a T zone. It's also non-conforming as to the side yard setbacks. So they needed several variances. The variances were approved.
Okay.
And that's, we did a variance for that area. Most of the properties in that T zone are not conforming. Yeah.
Okay. And
They're not increasing the number of units. So it's remaining a three-family. They're just adding, expanding the third floor. So it's a full third floor. They're actually making the third unit, which was non-compliant in terms of the livable area. It will now be compliant in terms of that, but it needed variances for the side yard setbacks, expansion of the non-conforming use, and a third story.
I think it was only 410 square feet of addition.
Yeah, it was very small.
right. And as far as this board is concerned, that's important because we don't want to review a BAR if these other things are unresolved. Because they're resolved, our focus today is really solely on the architectural appropriateness.
Yeah, they got the variance.
So with that,
Can I
if we,
ask what a T zone is?
The two-family zone.
Okay, thank you. I thought-
The T zoning districts are two-family.
Okay, thank you.
T zones, S zones, and then
Okay.
leftovers. Let's go. We can bring. Do we have
So Mr.
JB in here?
Hernandez. Yep. Mr. Hernandez, we're bringing you over.
All right, and so JB, as you come in, if you can just give us a, and I'm assuming you've got screen sharing. If you can, we just put the drawings up, a very kind of brief description of the plans, and then really just focus on the elevations, the architectural changes, the materials, kind of how what you're proposing differs from the existing condition, kind of from the perspective of the sidewalk and the neighbors.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Are you seeing the screen?
Yes.
Good. Oops. This is the house, if I can. This is the house 10 Everett. Like it was explained before, we did obtain the variances that we require. This is 10 Everett. This is the survey showing where the variances were required, and this is where the hatch area is the rear of the property where we put the addition. This is the third story was a small apartment, and it was under compliance. So the client wanted to basically expand the unit. This is the upper floor. You see in red is the stuff that we proposing to demo, and this is the existing roof below, flat roof or footprint that we expanded the apartment to. So this is the apartment. This is the dining and living area, the proposed dining and living area. This is the 2 bedrooms, the bathroom, and we have one of the bedrooms where we have a balcony on the rear. The roof plan, and from the front, from the street view, the only thing you'll be able to see from the addition is the little peak over there. Everything else is stacked in the back. And because of the design of these houses, you won't see any of the addition. This is the third floor addition that we're talking about. Again, this is you saw the color on the picture before. This is all a blue HardiePlank, bluish HardiePlank, and we're gonna see they're gonna match all the materials, the existing materials. This is the side view. In red, you see the line that show the existing roof before and the dormer at the back. Again, this is the view from the other side. Again, on the red line, we showing the existing view, the existing unit, and how we expanded it. And again, the materials is going to match what it was present. And this is neighborhood pictures, and you can tell all the houses are kind of similar style, and they're all, and this is behind the house, so you won't be able to see the addition. That's, I mean, this is kind of simple addition on the rear to kind of enlarge the 2nd floor apartment. And I don't know if the board has any more questions or.
Yeah,
So,
JB.
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's Bobby Bowker. I have a question. We're adding 410 square feet. What are we classifying the living space as? Are we adding bedrooms? Like, what are we adding in the 410 square feet?
With 400 square feet, we actually only adding 1 bedroom. Because if you see, let me see if I have in actuality, we're not adding bedrooms, but these bedrooms were so small before, and with the slope of the roof were very difficult to work with. So what this becomes is a much more workable and livable space. And it has a balcony in the rear and a larger bathroom.
How big what's the dimensions on the bedroom? It's 10 feet by.
They're 10 by 10.
Okay.
Or 10.6, I'm sorry.
So we're not adding a bedroom, it's staying at 3-bedroom apartment.
Yes. Mhm.
I'm sorry, the total square footage, JB, is 410, or it will be expanded to?
Addition.
This addition is 410. It was originally 600 square feet.
So you're adding an additional 410 square feet.
Yes. Mhm.
Just a living space, not bedroom.
JB, can you go just talk a little bit more about material? I didn't see any color rendering or material list.
I do have a picture of the rear. I don't think it didn't make it to the website, but I can show you that. I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, we can't show materials here that weren't
okay,
public.
right.
Can
I
you-
mean, this is the HardiePlank, it's blue HardiePlank, and they're matching all the materials. And it's, again, it's a rear of the property.
Sorry, but on the drawings, you show just kind of like a board, like a linear board, as well as a shape. Are those both HardiePlank? I mean,
No, yeah, it's gonna match everything. I mean, we can make that. is gonna match that. In the rear, let me see, talk about that.
So let me take a step back. So before we move too quickly, that plank, that linear plank siding will match. Is there a photograph that we have? In what you
Yes,
gave us? Can we see that photograph just so we can understand and be very clear in terms of what you're presenting here?
okay. hold on.
And a color.
That is the,
Okay. So what you're proposing is a plank to match the existing planking on the front of the blue planking on the front of the facade.
yes,
What's relatively new, is that also a hardy plank material?
yes.
And then for the shakes where you have that rear facade with those those balconies, is that a material that we can see in any of these photos?
Again, it's gonna match, it's gonna be the same as this.
It's the same
Yeah,
in the pediment of the front of the building?
yes,
Okay, so those are the two primary materials that you're proposing in the addition. We can see both of them clearly in this photo here.
yes.
Thank you, that's helpful. And then it's,
Porch railings.
right, the porch railings was
The
the,
PVC or the wood?
what are you proposing? I don't know if you heard Bobby was asking.
Yeah, what are the porch railings? What material? You do like PVC, wood? What are you doing back there?
It's gonna be PVC white. I'm not sure if we labeled that, but it's gonna be like ASIC type of material for low maintenance, and it's gonna be white.
Got it.
I see you have a white type railing on the front porch. Is it the same material?
The front porch is the original wood material. So, but we're gonna go with a same type, but it's gonna be a PVC.
You can do like a 6x6 and wrap it in an AZAC sleeve or something. whatever.
Yeah,
And these are white vinyl Anderson windows, it looked like from your schedule?
yes. So let me go back to.
Yeah, I saw there's a window
Window
schedule.
spec is there.
Okay. And your soffits and fascias?
They're gonna match the front, it's gonna be white. The idea is to have the same materials that we had throughout the house to match them all the same.
Yeah, I understand. It's helpful though, to see all of this laid out on the sheet rather than having to go back and forth between the photographs. If we can have it all in one place, this conversation goes much quicker.
Right, yes, and new Anderson windows, new siding and trim to match the existing.
And what does the back of this property abut? What's in the backyard here? Who can see this? Where can this be seen from?
Even the rear of the property is open. There's houses on I forget what the other street is, Washington Avenue. But they're all deep properties.
That's helpful. That image is helpful.
Mhm.
Any other questions on the board? Okay. So I think based on what we've seen, can I have a motion to open this up to a public hearing?
Yeah, Bobby Bowker making a motion to open a public hearing.
Second?
Carla
Go ahead, Bobby. No, after you.
Carla Diaz, second the motion.
Okay. Any objections? No objections. The motion passes. We're now in a public hearing. Is there anybody from the public? There's nobody in the room right now, but is there anybody in the public online on Zoom who would like to speak to this application? If so, you can use the hand raise function in Zoom. We'll wait a moment. 3 attendees in the room right now. I do not see any hands. And Maddie, were there any emails or any other
sir.
comments sent to the village? There were not. So with that, can I have a motion to close the public hearing on this matter?
Michael Aronson, motion to close the public hearing.
In a second.
Bobby Boucher, I second the motion to close.
Any objections? No objections, the motion passes. The public hearing is now closed. Any last minute kind of questions or comments from the board before we propose a motion on this application?
Pretty straightforward to me. Did a good job explaining it. After we drill down a little bit, I'm okay. Move forward.
All right. All right. So I guess we should just clarify, because there wasn't a material list, we did discuss during the meeting that we would match the materials as they were described, during the meeting on the front of the house, that all of these materials are existing and we have photographs of them presented. But that should be, I think, a condition of the approval, because there's not a specific material list. So with that said, we have a motion to approve the application.
Bobby Boucher making a motion to close BAR with conditions.
A second.
Michael, go ahead, Eric. Go
No,
ahead.
it's all right. Eric Talbot, I make the motion. I second.
All right. So with Bobby motioning and Eric seconding, we have a roll call.
Bobby Boucher.
Here. Aye.
Mike Larison. Aye. Carla Elia. Aye. Brenda Burback. Aye. Eric Talbot.
Aye.
Seth Roy.
Aye. All right, good. The motion carries 6-0. All right, so we're all good. Thank you very much, JB, and have a great.
Thank you, and see you next year.
Very good. Good night. All right. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have, we're now moving on to continuing business. We've got 30 Water Street. We can go ahead and bring the applicant in here. I'll just give them a moment to come into the room. And I'll just kind of give a brief summary of I think where we stand right now with this application. Just give them a moment.
Sorry, it's me you're giving a moment to.
All right. Got a very long agenda ahead of us. Remember, not on the last item already. Are they all in here?
It takes a minute.
Okay.
There's a delay where they can't hear you.
Perfect.
Hey, Mr. Wendling, Mr. Williams, Mr. Hahn, we can see you.
How are you?
Very good. So actually, before you guys kind of give any summation, I just want to kind of just welcome you into the room, kind of just lay the land where we are with this application right now. And then if anything kind of comes up that we say that you guys want to chime in or correct or add or whatever it is, give you the opportunity to do that. I may ask you a couple of questions, Linda, as we go through this as well. But I mean, at this point, this application has been before this board for several meetings. We've spent a lot of time really on all of the different components. We've got a lot of different approvals that this board has to take. We have several that we've already acted upon. So to date, this board has already acted on SECRA and provided a negative declaration. The applicant has achieved variances from the zoning board prior to this meeting. They had a determination of consistency with the LWRP from the Board of Trustees. They also got the planned waterfront permit from the Board of Trustees. So those are all actions that have been taken by the various agencies involved and approved. We still have several items that are open in front of this board right now, which includes a subdivision for the approval of 2 lots. One includes a density bonus, which we've spent some time talking about and already kind of we wrote a letter on to the Board of Trustees. This board has. We have a conditional use permit for residential use. We have a wetland permit. We have a tree permit. We have site plan approval, and we have BAR approval. So these are all kind of open items that are in the court of this board. And I just want to say that in all the time that we've been talking about this project, we've really kind of been able to scaffold these meetings to dive into and talk about each of those items. And many of them, we've really had full meetings or multiple meetings for each of those items. So obviously, we spent a lot of time talking about SECRA here, which led us into discussions about the adjacent wetlands. We spend a lot of time in the secret process discussing the trees and the tree removal process. So those items which are before us have really been discussed at length. Is also, related to those two items, we've spent a lot of time talking about, discussing and working out with the applicant an appropriate site plan. So that's also been a kind of there's been a lot of time there. The density bonus, which I mentioned a moment ago, we had a meeting where we really discussed and went through all of the details of what we needed to, what kind of recommendation we needed to make to the Board of Trustees before they acted in that area as well. So we had that meeting. The architectural review has been our last meeting here with you guys was really a summation from the meeting before, where we really focused on that issue. And we've spent some time, talking related to the density bonus. We've also talked about the conditional residential use, which is also before us. So kind of just putting all of those things together, we spent a lot of time. I think that we've kind of worked ourselves to a good place, and that now we're finally at a point where the other agencies, that also needed to act on this application already have. So I think that puts us in a good place tonight to really kind of sum up the conversation and hopefully kind of move this forward. So I think before I get into anything else, it would be, well, first of all, Linda, is there anything that I missed or that we should have added in that kind of initial time?
No, I think
Summary.
you covered sort of the list of things that this board is now at the point where you can grant. I think that over the last many months, you did a really good job of sort of focusing on issues. There's certain meetings focused on different issues. A lot of the things you really focused on during the secret process. When you did the letter of recommendation to the Board of Trustees on the waterfront special permit, and at that time, you really focused on the issues relating to the density bonus and wrote the letter to the Board of Trustees. So I think that, as Seth said, you've really been through a lot of the issues. I think at this point, you do have a memo from Keller Sessions. There are some items that they've indicated, which could certainly be conditions if the board was prepared to go ahead. I think really most of what's under your jurisdiction, you have looked at over the course of the last year or so.
Yeah, no, well said. So I think that was a good segue, because I do think that it's important right now for us to hear from Keller Sessions, who's obviously, as we have been spending a lot of time going through in detail. I think just kind of going over some of the more important, the bigger conditions that we should have front of mind as we kind of sum up this conversation.
So what I did with this memo, you've seen the prior memos. It's kind of been a running history of where things are, comments we've had, how they've been addressed. This memo that you have before you tonight took out all the weeds and just got down to the remaining items to be addressed. And they're really kind of broken out into two categories. One, I would consider to be engineering details that, while they need to be worked out, they're not going to change the plan as far as from a planning standpoint. You're not going to see wholesale changes to the site. They're not going to change parking. They're not going to change the layout. I'm talking about details related to sewer, water, construction details, things of that nature, which if the board was in agreement, I would have no issue, or would see no issue having them be dealt with as a condition of a site plan approval if you chose to do that. There are a couple of items in here that two of which I've deferred to the arborist related to tree removal and the tree mitigation plan and the landscape plan. I think there's still some, if I'm not mistaken, there's still some outstanding comments to be
Thought
addressed.
they had all been resolved. We spent a lot of time on that when we were doing secret. And there were discussions about the slopes and some of the other areas.
Mhm.
So I think the arborist comments have all
Okay,
been addressed.
So it's a lot of time. A lot of time.
okay, good. I know the,
And they did make some changes to the plans to address comments from the arborist.
I
okay,
think some subsequent changes to the garage footprint actually added a couple of more original trees back into the site plan.
fire department we've talked about, we've had the field meetings, the field test. There was a We had two alternatives, a preferred alternative and a kind of a fallback. The plan's been revised to illustrate that fallback option with the backing in of an emergency vehicle. I know the applicant had since provided a maneuvering plan to get the final blessing from the fire department. We've seen the plan. We have no issue with it. Obviously, it's in the fire department's final say as to whether or not they're satisfied with it. I don't know that we have
They're not
that.
unsatisfied.
I understand there was a meeting on site with village staff and the fire department and.
I could tell you that the plan that we last saw mimicked what was tested in the field.
Okay.
And accepted as the alternative maneuvering plan.
Good.
Some minor details regarding some, standpipes and sign lease connections for the parking garage. I think those are easy enough to just put on the plan at this point and have that loop closed. Some notes regarding retaining wall construction. Similarly, just some simple notes that we added to the plan. We're talking about comments 11, 12, and 14 is regarding the layout of the parking. I didn't see it. It might have been that it could have very well missed it, but just some added dimensioning just to demonstrate that the parking stalls, the dimensions of the aisles all comply with code. I know in the previous plans they did, just when they redid the garage footprint. I don't know if that carried over the dimensioning anyway. Like to see that on the plan, final plan. And then as far as what I would consider items that could be conditioned, one of which would be the subdivision plat, just to be updated to reflect the current garage building footprint. I don't think it changes any of the variances, all the modifications to the building were in the rear.
The modification to the garage was before the zoning board when they granted the variances.
Okay.
So they had those variances were granted based on the revised plan.
Great. So it's just a matter of making sure that that plan matches the footprint or the footprint matches on the plat. With regard, there's a couple of comments in here with regard to the Sing Sing Kill Greenway, the in-stream water quality basin, the in-stream energy dissipators that were discussed at length with the applicant. As you probably know, our firm designed the original section of the walkway. So the intent is for us to, as part of that original design, we had already designed a portion of that extension that would ultimately connect to this site. So the idea is for us to work with the village and the applicant to design that final piece now that we have a landing spot for it. And with that, we'll be coordinating with the applicant's engineers for the final locations of the in-stream dissipators, the water quality basin. We'll be working with Paul Frioli with regard to long-term access, whatever he may need to maintain those features. And then that will get into whatever kind of easements. I don't know if
There's
it's gonna
going to
meets
be,
and
so
bounds
as
or a
part of
blanket
the
easement.
closing and as part of the final subdivision, there's going to be a series of easements and an agreement.
So,
Because there's other easements the village is getting also. And some of them need to be shown on the plat as well. So
do you know if those access easements are going to be defined by meets and bounds, or would it be a blanket?
there might be some of both.
Okay. So that will all have to shake out as we get the design finalized, and, that will all just.
Obviously, just so everybody remembers, as a reminder, the sort of rear parcel, if you will, is going to be retained by the village. And then the front parcel is going to be conveyed to the developer. So obviously, the village needs access. And then also there's public access on the property as well.
So those easements would be a condition of.
They're actually part of the agreement, the sale
the sales
agreement.
agreement. Okay. Any other conditions I maybe stop you.
I think we've hit a bunch of them. Number 5 is related to the floodplain permit. As we've discussed already in the past, the applicant's already done the technical evaluation to demonstrate no adverse impact to the floodplain or floodway as a result of the project. They will need at some point to get a village floodplain development permit. That would obviously recommend that be issued prior to the building permit, and that could easily be a condition.
And we've done that on other projects as well. That's been put in as a condition, part of the issuance of the building permit.
And I would think the same would be true for the Army Corps permit for the work within the floodway itself. Health Department approval. It's the sanitary sewer is proposed to be a private service connection, as is the water, and I would expect that the health department would agree with that. But because of the loading, the sewer load from the project, it's more than 2,500 gallons per day. The health department needs to review it. It ends up almost being designed as if it were a public main, but it's not dedicated to the village. So that process needs to happen, but again, I don't see that changing the plan. I would easily, I wouldn't have an issue at all with that being a condition of the resolution. And then I know with regard to sewer, the applicant's required to provide some I&I mitigation for I&I inflow and infiltration. And I believe, and Chris, you can speak to this, I saw some communication between the applicant and Paul Frioli to coordinate. We've already agreed on the section of sewer to be televised. It's just a matter of getting that TV inspection done. And then we would review the report and determine what, if any, repairs needed to be done to that section of the main.
That's right, Joe. We're scheduled for Thursday morning to go out there. Paul's going to have somebody on site with us.
Great, that's this Thursday?
Yep.
Great.
And this is similar to the condition that we had on 136, 140
Correct.
Croton Avenue.
Correct, yeah, yep.
Yeah, and we've had this on other projects in the past, and sometimes, you know, it's very likely or could be that they do the inspection and the sewer main's fine and no work is required.
Mhm.
If there is something found and determined to be needed, again, I think we could make that a condition. We could, you know, include that as a
Similar to
condition.
Is that expense a burden of the applicant?
Yes.
The developer?
It's part of their mitigation for increasing the flows.
And then with regard to the stormwater management, their, what they called preliminary scope at the time was fairly complete. So we had some minor details in the not rain garden, I'm sorry, the green roof, for instance, details of construction for that. You know, we'll need to see all of that. But again, I don't see any of that changing. The sizing for it, the design calculations for the water quality structures, that's all been provided already. So it's just a matter of the final engineering details for that. I think that covers it.
Okay.
Any questions on any of them?
Yeah, I mean, are there board questions right now on the conditions?
I have a question just more about process and how this works, you know, when, given that what has been laid out for us about where the applicant's at, regarding they're not going to, any changes will be minor and nothing will be substantial or deep to really change from what's already been approved. If we were to make a resolution conditional on these conditions tonight, an approval, would that just give them space so they don't have to return to these meetings and they can just focus on wrapping those items up and getting?
A number of the items that Joe mentioned are items that have to be resolved before a building permit can even be issued.
Right, of course. So, but they're all contingent. I mean, all these items are contingent on building permit, but they're not really open. And that's nothing that's going to return to a public hearing.
Not unless they result in some kind of substantive change to the plan, which what you're hearing is that none of these should result in a substantive change to the plan. So everything that you're reviewing is not likely to change.
And if for whatever reason, something happened down the road that we can't foresee or something, and it changed the site plan or one of the other components that was approved, then they would have to come back, we would have to amend it and re-review those components.
So when every condition we found that we approve with stated conditions, all those conditions need to be met prior to getting a building permit.
So there's different categories. So some of the things, like where something needs to be added to the plans or something, we sort of do categories of conditions. So one category is the plan amendments to the plan prior to the site plan being signed. So prior to creating what is the final site plan. And then there's another set of conditions that have to be satisfied prior to the issuance of a building permit. And then there's typically another set of conditions that have to be satisfied prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And then there's usually some ongoing types of conditions. So we usually have a number of categories of conditions.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
And thanks for asking the question, Eric. It was a good one to talk about. Other questions? If not, I would like to just kind of see if there are any responses to what's been laid out from the applicant. You're good, good. Okay, yeah, so, so with what, Keller Sessions has laid out, kind of the process that's before us, I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity if there's any questions or if you wanted to respond to anything that Joe said before we move forward.
No, we had reviewed the memo and the process you just laid out is consistent with our understanding too. So Rich, unless there's anything I'm missing, we're comfortable with everything that was just discussed.
Okay, I see Rich nodding his head yes. Okay, okay, so at this point, I think it would be appropriate to open this up to the public. I'm mindful that there are no attendees in the waiting room, but
You have to say it.
nevertheless, and there's also, just for the record, nobody in the room with us either. But is there a motion to reopen the public hearing on this application?
Bobby Bowker making a motion to open a public hearing.
Open or reopen? Doesn't matter.
It's kind of the same.
Tonight we'll open it.
Michael Aronson, second.
All right. Any objections? No objections. Motion carries. We are now in a public hearing. As I noted before, there are no attendees to raise their hands, and there's nobody in the room, which tells me there's nobody here to speak. I will just double check. Maddie, has anybody from the public spoken since our last meeting?
No, sir.
Posted?
Or any
Thank you.
emails? No emails.
Okay, so it seems clear that there's been no new public input on this matter since our last meeting, and nobody's here tonight. Given everything that we've looked at, talked about, the lengthy list of conditions, I think it would be appropriate for us to close the public hearing of this matter. If I could have a motion to do that, that would be great.
Eric Talbot, I make the motion to close the public hearing.
Carlo Diaz, second the motion.
All right, any objections? No objections. The motion passes. The public hearing on this matter is closed. So I don't think there's really much more for us to say at this point. I think we've been through everything. We've gotten a list of conditions which are memorialized in the Keller Sessions memo, which is also part of the public record at this point. And we've outlined the different approvals that we're looking at today, which I can just say one last time for the record. And then I guess, so before I read these, so Linda, as we move forward on this, I know what we've done in recent applications that are similar, where we have a series of different approvals. We've kind of combined them into a single vote, and I just want to make sure that's appropriate.
And just for the board, through the record of this proceeding over the last year or so, again, you've discussed the density bonuses, you've discussed the trees, you've discussed the conditional use permit, the wetland permit, BAR. Is there anything that any of the board members want to kind of go back and remember, or are you comfortable with how everything's been discussed? We had been through the breakdown of the provisions that allowed for the density bonus and the calculation of that. If anybody feels they want anything run through again, we can do that. But I really think that over the course of the last year, you've done a really good job of going through all of that in the record on this matter.
I agree. I don't have any further questions, man.
Very good. Awesome.
And I don't think from the last meeting there were any additional changes you wanted on BAR. I just wanted to make sure there were no conditions. I think we discussed the changes. They presented their changes at the last meeting, and I think everybody was good with those.
I agree. That was my takeaway, and I think that was part of our.
Just making sure there's no other conditions other than the engineering conditions for Keller Sessions.
Right. Yeah, no, it's worth doing that. Let's take a moment to read through those, and we spent a lot of time on the material of the garage.
Yeah, you really spent 2 meetings on BAR.
We did.
Yeah. We want to go through all the conditions and stay on.
I feel like the conditions are those that Joe just listed out, and which are also listed in the Keller Sessions memo.
As enumerated.
As enumerate.
It doesn't, I was just wondering that I don't think it's necessary. Did we want to like clarify which conditions were, a building, the issuance of a building permit is contingent on versus, the final plan or C of O, or is it not
So I can tell you
necessary?
how I usually do that when I prepare the resolutions. Anything where the Keller Sessions memo says, basically the plan should show this or the plan should show that, I make those a condition, should be done on the plans before the plans are signed. So I kind of follow their lead. We also have some standard conditions that we put in all the time about following the plans and no changes, and some things like that, so.
Right, and I can say the floodplain development permit, the Army Corps permit for working the stream, the SWIFT, and the subdivision plat, all those will have to be, submitted and before the building permit gets issued.
Yeah, and the subdivision itself has some sort of standard conditions. The subdivision plat also needs health department approval.
Right.
It has to be signed by the health department, some standard things like that.
Okay, that's helpful.
I think the only comment or condition in this memo that would happen prior to a CO would be the certification of the structural components, which are noted in here. Everything else is going to be provided before the site plans are either signed or building permits issued.
That's helpful too.
And then because of the unique nature of this project where it's village property and there is an agreement with the village which will survive even the closing, there's a number of things that are conditions of that agreement that, just one example, very often you would have a condition requiring a performance bond. There's actually requirements in the agreement between the village and the developer with regard to security to make sure the project, because the village is selling them the property in exchange for receiving certain public benefits. So that agreement already provides for security to make sure that those benefits get constructed. So I actually had some discussion with Corporation Counsel this afternoon about not doubling up on that. And we went over the provisions that are already in that agreement and decided that a performance bond requirement is not in your rules.
And along those lines, we've talked in previous meetings about the need for a recreation fee and how that would not be appropriate for this property because they're actually providing recreational opportunities.
Providing
that don't
parkland
currently
and it's
exist.
all affordable.
So those are all good things to touch on.
I actually do have a question about the affordability requirement. Is that memorialized in the sale or?
Yes. It's also going to be memorialized through the funding sources that they're getting to an even greater degree.
And that will survive ownership, so it's on a deed, like how does that?
Yeah, there will be deed restrictions recorded against the property, largely required by the funding sources. Because they're getting funding specific to affordable housing.
So even if they sell it in what, 7, 15,
The
20
deed
years,
restrictions
okay,
get filed.
got it.
And it's, Jim, is it a 50-year or I don't remember off the top
It's
of
a
my head.
minimum 50. I'm not sure if it's 50 or 99, but through the new homeland acquisition, it's a minimum 50.
What were the AMI, like 60%, 80%?
It's a
40%?
mix. So the way that a lot of the newer projects are working, it used to be that rentals were just 60% AMI. They now allow you to do a mix.
Okay.
So it's not all at 60%, it becomes more of a mixed income. Jim, what your spread is?
Yeah, Chris, are we 40 to 80 AMI? I think we're 40 to 80, which, is that right, Chris?
It's either 30 or 40 to 80, yep.
And what the benefit of that is it creates a wider band of potential families and individuals that could live at this development. Previously, as Linda said, they were either all 60 or 50 and 70, but now this is called income averaging. It's relatively new over the past 2 years, and we're doing that on all of our affordable deals. It's a really great program by the state.
It's been a big change, and I think a change for the better, because it really gives you a
Opens it up
more
a lot
mixed
more.
income. It's all affordable, but it's a more
Right.
mixed income. They have to average
Yeah, what's the
60.
charge?
average 60, and it gets you almost from like a 30-40% affordable threshold to almost like a village workforce 80% type level. And we, as Linda said, we average 60.
Excellent. All right. Any other closing questions? These are actually been good things to discuss as we're sort of finishing up here.
Yeah, the affordability isn't really something this board has discussed or been involved in, but I know it's of interest to you.
Yeah, totally. Okay. I think then we can put this to a vote at this point. So, so just to summarize now, what we are at this point acting on, if I can look at one of my cheat sheets, I don't know which one. I'm going to go to type one, not the handwritten one. But
I
so
printed it if you want it.
with the glasses, I can still see on my phone. So what we have before us right now, we have the subdivision, so of the single lot into two. The village will retain one, the applicant will retain the other. The density bonus, which is related to the waterfront permit letter, that recommendation that we made to the
As
BOT,
well as an affordable housing density bonus.
as well as the affordable housing density bonus. Yes. The conditional use permit for residential use, which we spent a little time talking about last meeting, and is similar to other conditional use permits that we've issued in this neighborhood and area. The wetland permit, the tree removal permit, which we did spend a lot of time, and the applicant did respond to the arborist comments, and we went back and forth. I just want to make sure that we reiterate that one for the record. The approval of the site plan and BAR approval. So those are the items before us. So with that being outlined, the Keller Sessions memo and Joe's kind of summary and explanation of the conditions that remain, do we have a motion for approval of this application?
Michael Aronson, motion to approve the project and all of the actions as previously outlined.
Bobby Bowker, I second the motion.
All right, and we will do a roll call.
Bobby Beck.
Did they close the public hearing?
Oh, you did close.
We did.
I did close the
Yeah,
public
okay.
hearing.
Sorry.
Bobby Bowker.
Aye.
Michael Aronson.
Aye.
Carla Elia.
Aye.
Brenda Burback.
Aye.
Eric Talbot.
Aye.
Seth Roy.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. So
Congratulations.
Members of the board, Linda, Joe, Maddie, thank you very much for your help through this process. We're looking forward to getting started.
Guys.
I think this was a really good process that was completed in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I think the process worked well.
Thank you.
Great.
yeah, looking forward to see this thing.
Norway, have a good evening.
Good night.
And
I was remiss in
yes.
introducing.
So at the beginning of this meeting, there was
Sorry,
something we should have done.
We're still in the meeting, so do you want to do an introduction, or I mean, so at this point, I apologize, because I should have been, we've met now.
No,
and
it's
on
fine.
Zoom.
I said hello to a lot of people when they came in and, I already started chirping, putting my 2 cents in. I'm Valerie Manostra.
So Valerie will be working with us more closely, especially as new applications and new projects come in the
Yes,
coming year. So I don't know if you just want to give a quick little introduction.
And
here
by the way,
yourself,
we were
or-
not making her catch up on a year's worth of 30 waters.
So we're working on that resolution. I'll be dealing with the DAR resolutions and planning board resolutions moving forward. So, and then I'll be working closely with Linda and Stuart on review of those resolutions. So I'm a principal planner right now for Voorhees, and I've been working in the planning field for about 20 years. And I used to work for the village of Austining for about 10 years. And that was about, and I left around 2015. And so they asked me back and assess. So
And it's
happy to
the
do
firm,
that.
so it's the firm is,
Yes.
so it would be Valerie and some of
Right.
her.
And I have a number of colleagues that will also be assisting on various aspects, but I will be attending the planning board meetings and working closely with Jamie and Joe and Linda and Maddie, so.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you.
welcome aboard. Welcome. I may as well also just kind of, I don't know if everyone saw the news yesterday, but the $10 million
Oh, right.
downtown revitalization
Yeah.
grant went through and projects were selected by the state. So hopefully, we'll see as a board some new projects coming before us, really shooting related to that.
And Bobby, is this your last meeting or your term's not up yet? No?
It is up there.
That's what I was wondering.
Your term is up this, so. This,
Are you getting?
is this your first term? Is it your?
It's my first time on this.
Okay.
Were you looking to walk off quietly into the sunset?
No, I'm really planning.
Have you indicated you want to stay?
Yeah, we'll have to leave January first. That's okay. We stayed in Austin for this next couple of years.
There you go.
Yeah, don't leave if you don't have to.
Please don't. So, awesome. Well, very
Thank
good.
you.
So thanks, everybody. So we have a motion then to close tonight's meeting.
Eric Talbot, I make the motion to close tonight's meeting.
Black will second.
All right. Eric Carla. All right. Any objections? No objections. The motion passes. The meeting is closed. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday.
Great
And
holiday.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, yes.
Yes.
Great holiday, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
Jamie.
Happy holidays.
I don't plan on it.